Changes happening on our big wall here in Kiev. If you look at you can hear the explosions happening down here. These are people who had tents set up all along this ridge. The police are coming from this direction, it's our understanding, and they've begun to throw everything they have into this fire over here. One they had set apparently as a protection from the police, and they're throwing everything they have into it. This has just started happening in the last few minutes. We had a wider view. This shows the main square, and people doing this same kind of thing all along. Look at this. Everything that they have that's their property on this side, they're throwing into here. And we've also seen some sort of munitions going in that direction. See that? Looks like a Molotov cocktail, doesn't it? That's what appears to be happening. And then you'll see some tracers coming back from the police as well, incoming from that area. It's our understanding that those are stun grenades. That's just what we're hearing from reporters who are there in the square. So the fires are building as the clock continues to tick and police make their way in. You can see them dismantling. It's not that clear, but you can see them dismantling their tents and throwing them into the fires over here. What is this? A last-ditch effort to keep the police away? That's what the reporters on scene believe. Again, in a struggle between East and West, a government which wants to align with the Russians and a populace that wants to align with Europe for economic and social reasons and on and on and on. And now it's come to this, and another country in turmoil, as Fox reports live this hour. Crane now, and we're watching live as medics, you can see the red crosses on their clothing here, are carrying the injured out of there. They're wearing what amounts to miners' helmets, lights on helmets that keep the debris from hitting them on the head. A number of people have been carried out. We've been told that 9 people have died in protests here, including 2 police officers. And the scene has changed dramatically just since this program has been on the air in the last 24 minutes. In a moment, the camera will pull out and we'll show you the square as a whole. In fact, while they're doing this, let me let you take a look at this over here. This is the scene. Chris has it in his bat. This is an aerial, or I thought we had it.
Yeah, no, just showing where we are in relation to where it is. Yeah. So, Shep, the fighting is actually happening just north of the City Hall area. This is in Parliament Square. Yes, it's in.
Can we? No, that's all we can do. You got it over here. We got a street view over here.
Yes, Shep.
Come on.
I've got here. We've got the monument. You can see it burning over there, but this is a daytime view. It's a pretty busy area. A lot of construction going on, at least when this was taken. But clearly, right now, it's a mess.
Here's what we're talking about. You can see this in the background. Once they get to that shot, and these construction sites, I believe, are down, and this is the area where all the protesters are. Give them a shot of the wall now, so you can see this ambulance being loaded. We've been watching this a lot, and we've noticed a marked change in the last 25 minutes, as I was saying a short time ago. The area where the flames are happening, I was telling you earlier how they had set up these barricades and they had tents there. People were living. We've seen this sort of scene so many places, Zuccotti Park for one. But we've seen this sort of a scene where people have camped out and said, government, you're doing us wrong. Well, the police have actually moved in. And when we were watching what looked like people throwing their own tents into the fires that they had built themselves, it turns out, according to the reports of reporters who are on the ground now, that those were actually police who were tearing all of their stuff up and burning their property. This, of course, just ambulance workers. But if and when the camera pulls out again, you'll see the predicament that they all find themselves in. It's now police mixed with protesters, and it's been a volatile clash over the last 20 minutes or so. Not the least of which these injuries that people have sustained have happened all over. We've seen them trying to get ambulances in. The crowds have been parting so that the ambulance can come into this square with these enormous fires burning in the background. The camera pulling out now, it's a little distracting, especially in the dark of night. But everyone seems to be wearing helmets, not just police, but protesters as well. You can see some of the flags of the opposition here and the flames burning. And the monument, I don't see in this particular picture, though this wall is so big. Actually, I believe that might be the monument over there in the corner. At any rate, you can see that fires are still burning, and you can see incoming into these fires, there are also fireworks. I understand we have someone on the line to give us some. Michael O'Hanlon is with us. He's a senior fellow and director of foreign policy research at the Brookings Institution. Michael, this has taken a marked turn in the last 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's remarkable, Shep, as you know. I mean, sometimes thought of as a fairly quiet country, but certainly strategically very important. And who knows where these kinds of pressures can go once they're unleashed. We've seen it. The whole world knows it from watching the Arab world in the last few years, but it could be anywhere, and now we see it up north as well.
Help our viewers understand the importance of Ukraine, a Texas-sized nation.
Yeah, it's close to 50 million people, and it's sort of got two main parts, and half of it is very pro-Russian, or sort of the Russian diaspora, a lot of Russian speakers, almost an extension of Russia in some ways. The other half, much more separate and independent-minded, but it's obviously one of the, when I think of Europe, I think of the giant of Germany, and then, of course, our close ally Britain and France. But then I think there are a half dozen countries of the size of Ukraine, like Spain, Poland, Italy. These are the kind of countries, 40, 50 million, that are really in many ways the heart of the continent in terms of where most people live, in terms of what drives the economics, and certainly of all the former Soviet republics. Ukraine is one of the most populous. I think it is the most populous, and it's certainly one of the most strategically important. It's sort of a bridge towards the main part of Europe. As you know, it's not in NATO now, but we've sometimes talked as if maybe someday it would be. The Russians hate that idea. It's part of what motivates them to be tough on Ukraine, and now the Ukrainian citizenry is speaking up itself.
Yeah, there's been a political and intellectual battle going on here, at least since November, if not before. Now this physical battle in the streets, and I wonder the degree to which the world would have concern that this would spread.
Well, I think this particular one is confined to Ukraine in the short term, but what it will lead people to wonder is how are the Western nations getting along with Russia? And what does this mean about how any kinds of eruptions that may occur in other countries for their own internal reasons, let's say the Baltic states or Georgia again, how will the West and Russia interact in this space that's become, in a sense, the strategically contested space? And let's hope it never becomes a militarily contested space again. But this is in the belt of nations that are watching very carefully, because some of these countries are not in NATO, but they look to the West as a part of the world they really want to get closer to. Russia doesn't want to see them go. And you could imagine tug of wars setting a precedent for how future cases like this might be addressed. But I think Ukraine on its own merits is important enough that I'm worried less about precedent. I'm worried more about exactly what's happening here right now.
Yeah, I think the whole world is. The battle at hand at the moment is a battle over the reduction of the number of powers that the presidency has, because the people want more power to make changes. The president has sort of absconded with those powers. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah, I think that, there was a move towards some greater economic and political tightening with the West, and then the president sort of had second thoughts. This was not going to be a military issue. This was, as I say, economic and political. Yeah. And he essentially did things capriciously and on his own when the whole country thought that decisions had been made in just the opposite direction. So it's not just a theoretical question of distribution of power. It's the specific way that recent decisions about affiliating more closely with the European Union were handled, and what this says about Yanukovych.
Michael O'Hanlon from Brookings. Michael, it's nice to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Shepard.
I've been watching very closely on the big wall to see exactly what's happening here. Some of these people appear to be protesters. Some of these people appear to be police. But they've all ended up in an area right next to each other. And though we haven't seen hand-to-hand fighting, we've certainly seen incoming and outgoing. So, which leads me to believe there are police and protesters sort of all mixed together. That's one area, and look at this over here. You can see them carrying the flag and throwing more and more debris into these fires. The fires, initially an effort to keep the police away, now it appears we have somewhat organized chaos and continuing ambulances in and out of this square. We see outgoing right here. People are shooting in that direction, so we can only assume the police are in that direction. Continuing coverage of a major outbreak of violence in Ukraine. This is Kiev, and this is Fox News Channel. Continuing coverage of the now exploding violence in Ukraine. We have just gotten word in the last minute from authorities there. Ukrainian police say 4 policemen have been killed in today's riots and 39 policemen sustaining gunshot wounds, more than 100 others injured. So the toll on the police force is growing. 4 police officers killed, 39 police officers shot but have survived, and 100 police officers now said to have been injured. The violence continues. It is our belief that the police, some of them have pulled back. You can see the protesters with the flags. They're marked by that. The police are in heavy riot gear, and some are now wrapped in what appears to be some sort of probably heat-resistant clothing of some kind. They look like big orange wraps, and you'll see them from time to time. At any rate, the protests are going in a violent direction. We'll have continuing coverage right after this commercial break.